is actually this more about a cultural change. We have to start talking much more about how we value freedom and how we value our liberties and how we value our democratic rights. Because I don't know about you, and we've obviously been on the same side of this argument for a long time now, but it feels like there is a cultural change happening. And a lot of ordinary folk who were terrified by the government propaganda that we spoke about earlier in the show are looking back at what they were put through and thinking, hang on a moment, this wasn't right.
Yes, I think that's gradually happening, but only as the government remove the regulations and only when the government is no longer having press conferences at 5 o'clock when everyone is required to be in their homes and told that they can only exercise for 1 hour, even though that was only guidance. It was never said that that was only guidance, and so on. So during that period, I think you were talking about the state of fear and the behavioural scientists and their influence over behaviour just now. But that has now gone, and now the public is waking up to what happened to a certain extent, but only to a certain extent. I'm not convinced that the message has been won by any means that this was an aberration. I think it was an aberration. On any view, it was an aberration. It was totally alien to anything we've ever done before. It was medieval in its approach, although even in the Middle Ages, during the plagues, we didn't insist everyone, regardless of infection, had to remain in their homes. It was contrary to all, as I said, it was contrary to all the advice. And now we see, and we've seen this for a very long time, because in fact, we could see how inaccurate the Ferguson model was within a very short space of time by looking at Sweden and by looking at the models that he had done for Sweden. He was cross-examined by Viscount Ridley in the House of Lords in mid-2020, and he claimed not to have modelled Sweden. That was inaccurate. He said an inaccuracy to the House of Commons, Neil Ferguson, because he did. And if you look at the appendices to his reports, he modelled Sweden, and it was something like 10 or more times more fatalities he predicted than Sweden actually had with the type of measures that he predicted. So that is a measure of the man that Neil Ferguson is, and it's a measure of the inaccuracy of these models. And of course, what we've seen in the recent past is the University of Warwick, the Imperial College, and the London School of Tropical Hygiene or Liverpool School of Tropical Hygiene, the three main modellers, have again been modelling on a completely inaccurate basis that fails to take into account anything that we have learned over the last 2 years, and in fact fails to take into account anything that we learned before that. That is another reason why it is wholly wrong for the government to be imposing regulations of this severity.